I wasn't supposed to be home that afternoon. The shoot in Austin had been canceled last minute. Some location permit issue that was supposedly someone else's fault. But honestly, I didn't stick around long enough to care. My producer was fuming. The models were already halfway through hair and makeup, and the client was ghosting everyone. One of those days. So, I packed up early, loaded my gear into the rental, and hit I-35 back to Dallas. 3 hours of podcasts, cold gas station coffee, and the kind of solitude that usually clears my head. But not that day. I got home a little after 2. The street was quiet, sun leaning hard against the sidewalks. I remember that. The heat shimmering on the driveway, my hand hesitating on the front door because I realized I hadn't texted Lana I was coming back early. I told myself it didn't matter. We didn't need to announce every move like we used to. Still, the first step into the house felt strange. Not immediately. At first, it was just the usual hush of our home. The thermostat humming, the faint smell of the vanilla candles she liked, the clink of the wind chime on the back patio. Then I noticed it. A smell. Subtle, sharp. Cologne. Not mine. It was faint but distinct. The kind of scent that hangs in the air after a man walks through a room and lingers like it has a right to be there. I paused, trying to place it. Woodsy, maybe. Expensive. Not one I owned. And definitely not one Lana would have worn, even for a client. I followed it into the kitchen, where 2 coffee mugs sat in the sink. They were mismatched. One was chipped on the rim, the other had a logo from a Colorado ski resort we'd never been to. We didn't use mugs like that. Lana had a thing for aesthetics, stoneware, neutrals, double-walled glass. These looked like something out of a truck stop. Both cups had remnants of dark liquid inside. Black coffee. Lana didn't drink black coffee. Ever. She used to joke that it tasted like regret. I'd offered her sips of mine over the years, and she always made a face, reaching for oat milk and cinnamon like it was a crime to drink it straight. So whose were these? I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Not yet. Maybe someone stopped by. Maybe it was her brother or a friend from the gym. Maybe it was nothing. But then I saw it, the jacket, hanging on the rack near the door. A faded Levi's trucker jacket. Medium wash. Worn but not dirty. Folded slightly at the collar like someone had just taken it off. It wasn't mine. I don't wear denim jackets, and Lana wouldn't keep one on the rack unless it had just been worn. She was too neat for that. Jackets either went on bodies or into closets. Not limbo. A sound broke the silence, running water upstairs. The bathroom. I stood there for a second, one hand still gripping the strap of my camera bag, trying to slow my thoughts. I didn't want to assume anything. Maybe she was alone. Maybe she was in the shower and didn't know I was home. Maybe. Then I heard the soft thud of her footsteps. She came down the stairs a minute later, her robe tied loosely at the waist, hair wet and towel dampened. No makeup. Barefoot. She didn't look startled. She didn't freeze or fumble or hide. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me, but not in alarm. More like a reminder. Like she'd rehearsed a scene and suddenly realized she was already on stage. "Oh," she said, adjusting her robe casually. "You're home early." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, Austin got rained out. Some permitting issue." She tilted her head slightly, a strand of hair clinging to her cheek. "That *CKs. You guys drove all the way down there for nothing?" "Pretty much." A pause. Her eyes flicked to the kitchen, and I saw her take it all in, the mugs, the jacket, the tension hanging invisible between us. But she didn't blink. Her expression stayed neutral, even soft. "Oh," she said, gesturing toward the jacket. "That's from the trunk, actually. I was going through the donation pile. Found a bunch of old stuff I forgot we had." She moved toward the kitchen like it was all part of a casual afternoon. "And the coffee," she added, turning on the sink. "I was doing this thing for the agency. You know that local coffee brand I mentioned? They're doing a packaging redesign, so I brewed a few of their blends to test flavor notes. Thought I'd get a head start." Her tone was calm, even unbothered. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something off about her delivery, too smooth, too fluid. No hesitation, no room for error. like she'd gone over it in her head before I walked in. Every word felt carefully chosen, planted, and it was the lack of panic that hit me the hardest. I watched her rinse the mugs, humming under her breath, like we were just two people living our quiet little life without a cloud in sight. Most people, if they were caught in something, even just a white lie, would show some sign. A tremble in the voice, a defensive snap, a misstep in the story. Lana had none of that. She didn't over-explain. She didn't get flustered. She didn't ask how my day was. That's when the discomfort turned into a cold, settling certainty. Something had happened here. Something more than she was willing to say. And maybe she hadn't expected me home so soon, or maybe she had. But either way, she was ready. Too ready. I leaned against the counter, pretending to be casual. "Interesting mugs," I said, nodding toward the sink. She smiled. "Oh, those? From the back of the cabinet. You know, I like to mix things up." She never did. Our mugs were always coordinated. Instagram-worthy. I remembered once knocking a handle off one, and she replaced the whole set. I nodded, playing along. "You brewed both cups black?" "Hum." She didn't look up. Didn't want to skew the flavor profile. She poured out the remains from the mugs, wiped her hands on a towel, and turned to face me with a perfectly practiced expression. Pleasant. Relaxed. Nothing to see here. And that was the scariest part. Not the evidence, the scent, the cups, the jacket. Not even the lie. It was the fact that she didn't seem scared. That she had an answer for everything, and no visible worry about whether I believed her. Like she wasn't afraid of being caught. Or worse, like she had already accepted that I knew and just didn't care. After that day, the day with the coffee, the jacket, and the explanation that was way too calm, something shifted in me. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't accuse. I didn't demand answers or go looking through her things. I just nodded, smiled, went upstairs, and told her I was going to rest for a bit. But inside, I felt like the floor had quietly dropped out from beneath our life, and I was the only one who noticed. She moved on like nothing happened. But I couldn't. For the first time in a long time, I really looked at our life. At her. At us. And I started remembering all the little things I had dismissed. Those small red flags I had folded into excuses and pushed into the back of my mind. And suddenly, they weren't small anymore. It started with her wedding ring. She used to wear it everywhere. Even when we worked out together at the gym, she'd leave it on, just slipping on those rubber guards to keep it from getting scratched. She used to fiddle with it when she was nervous, twist it on her finger while thinking, or tap it against a coffee mug when she was distracted. Then one day, she didn't wear it to yoga. I noticed immediately. She said it was annoying during planks. Okay, fine. Then she didn't wear it to brunch. Then to dinner with friends. Then to a weekend trip to San Antonio. When I brought it up, she waved it off. "It's just more comfortable this way," she said. "And besides, everyone knows we're married." She left it in a little ceramic dish by the sink, the one where she kept her earrings and lip balm. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. But over time, the dish became its permanent home. She stopped wearing it altogether, and I stopped asking. Then there was her phone. Lana used to be the kind of person who left it face up on the counter, always buzzing with texts from clients, friends, her sister. She'd scroll mindlessly while we watched TV, hand it to me to look at memes or play a song. That changed gradually. It started going face down, then on silent, then into her pocket whenever I walked into the room. When I asked about it, she was quick with an answer. "Work's been chaotic. I'm trying to focus more. It's just spam texts. I'm sick of always being available." It made sense until it didn't. One night, we were sitting on the couch, watching reruns of some cooking show. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and immediately turned the screen away. I caught a glimpse of a name I didn't recognize. She said it was someone from the agency. I didn't ask again. Then there were the trips to Houston. That's when it started feeling real. Lana worked in branding and client experience, mostly remote, some travel, usually regional. So when she said she needed to go to Houston for a weekend to meet with a new client, I didn't blink. But then it became a regular thing. First it was once a month, then twice, Then it felt like she was gone every other weekend. I offered to tag along once. Make a trip out of it. She declined. It's all meetings and late nights, she said. Nothing fun. When I pressed for details, what the project was, who the client was, she always had vague answers. A startup, she'd say. Can't say much yet. Or, it's all under NDA. But she'd come back looking different. Not always happier. Not always tired. Just different. One night, after her third trip that month, she came home and dropped her suitcase in the foyer like she didn't even want to unpack. I asked her how it went, and she gave me that tight smile. Productive. That was it. I stood there waiting for more, but she walked straight past me, into the bathroom, and closed the door. I stared at her suitcase, still zipped, and suddenly felt like a stranger in my own hallway. I started noticing her moods next. She'd swing wildly between affection and distance. One day she'd be cold and distracted, barely saying 10 words to me over breakfast. The next, she'd drape her arms around my shoulders while I did the dishes, kiss my neck, laugh too loud at things that weren't funny. Felt less like love and more like an act. Like she was trying to keep something alive just long enough for me not to notice it was already dead. And her body language had changed. The way she sat across from me, not toward me but angled away. The way she'd hold her phone closer to her chest when scrolling. The way she'd stop what she was doing the second I walked into a room, then look up like nothing had happened. I even caught her once, sitting in the living room, laptop open. I came in through the back door and startled her. She closed her browser so fast the screen didn't even have time to fade. I asked her what she was working on. Emails, she said. But the page wasn't email. I knew that much. Then came the social media shift. It sounds small, I know, but it was like watching her change in front of the world. Slowly, publicly, like a snake shedding skin one layer at a time. She used to post casually. Snaps of us at brunch, photos of her plants, the dog we fostered that one spring. Then, almost overnight, her feed got cleaner. Curated. Edgy. Like a lifestyle influencer in the making. Gone were the couple photos. Gone were the candid moments. They were replaced with overhead coffee_ts, caption lyrics, moody edits with vague one-liners like, clearing space for clarity. The worst part? The heart symbols. Tiny. Subtle. Sometimes in the background of a photo, other times tucked into captions. Not emoji hearts, real ones. Drawn in foam, in notebooks, on napkins. And always in photos she never posted the day they were taken. Once I recognized a cafe she tagged. It was in Waco. She had never mentioned going there. She said it was just a stop on the way to Houston. By the time all the pieces were laid out in front of me, I realized how long I'd been gaslighting myself. I used to trust her completely. I used to think, she wouldn't do that. She loves me. We've built too much for her to throw it away. But now I was realizing love isn't armor. Time isn't proof. And silence, hers, mine, was a language we were both fluent in. Every time I brought something up, she deflected. Smoothly, sweetly. I'd ask, why don't you wear your ring anymore? And she'd say, you know it bugs me when I type all day. I'd ask, who's that guy commenting on all your photos? And she'd say, he's a friend from work. Relax. I'd ask, why didn't you tell me you were going to Waco? And she'd say, babe, I literally texted you that day. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't start fights. She didn't lie in a way that could be proven. She just built a version of the truth so polished, I started to feel like the crazy one for questioning it. But that day with the coffee, that was the crack in the glass. And once I saw it, once I really saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Every explanation she gave after that felt like a script. Every smile felt like a cue. Every silence felt like a warning. She thought she had me in the palm of her hand. But what she didn't know was that I had stopped listening to her words and started listening to her pauses. I didn't plan to go looking for her that afternoon. I was driving back from a client meeting in Temple, stomach growling, head pounding, already rehearsing an excuse to skip dinner. I hadn't slept well the night before. Too many thoughts looping, too many half-memories resurfacing and rearranging themselves into something I didn't want to name yet. Waco wasn't even on my route. I took the exit on impulse, telling myself I needed food, something greasy and immediate, anything to ground me in the present moment. The cafe sat off a side street I'd never noticed before, small and unpretentious, the kind of place you stop at once and forget. I remember thinking how quiet it was when I walked in. Not empty, just subdued. Low music, the soft clatter of plates, sunlight slanting through tall windows and landing in warm rectangles on the floor. I ordered without really looking at the menu, paid, and turned toward the seating area. That's when I saw her. Lana was sitting in the corner, back straight, one leg crossed over the other, fingers wrapped around a mug. She was laughing. Not the polite kind, not the kind she used around clients or neighbors. This was unguarded, open, real. Across from her sat a man I didn't know. But I knew the jacket, the same faded denim, the same worn collar, draped casually over the back of his chair like it belonged there. Like he belonged there. My body reacted before my mind did. Chest tightening, pulse spiking, a strange heat rising behind my eyes. I didn't move closer. I didn't sit down. I just stood there, half hidden by a column, watching my life tilt sideways. They weren't touching. Not yet. But they were close, angled toward each other in a way that shut the rest of the room out. His hand rested on the table, palm up, inches from hers. Waiting. She leaned forward slightly and said something I couldn't hear. He smiled like he already knew the ending. I told myself to leave. I told myself I'd seen enough. But my feet wouldn't listen. I stayed long enough to hear her voice carry, just enough to cut through the background noise. "It's not bad," she said, shrugging lightly. "It's just flat. Schedules. Logistics. We function well. That's about it." She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was dismissive, like she was talking about a job she'd already quit. The man nodded, his fingers finally brushing hers. She didn't pull away. No hesitation. No glance around the room. No concern about who might be watching. No ring. That's when it settled in. Not as panic. Not as rage. As certainty. I wasn't discovering anything new. I was arriving late to a conclusion she had already reached. Whatever we'd been pretending to maintain had ended long before this moment. The house. The routines. The explanations. All of it was a holding pattern. Only her body still came home. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm over or demand answers or make a scene worthy of public sympathy. I turned around quietly and walked out the way I'd come in. The bell over the door chimed once behind me. She didn't look up. In the car, I sat with the engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I didn't feel tears. I didn't feel anger. Just a hollow clarity, like the moment after anesthesia wears off and you realize the surgery already happened. I understood then why she'd been so calm that day, why the explanations had sounded rehearsed, why nothing I said rattled her. She wasn't hiding something she feared losing. She was managing something she'd already let go of. And for the first time since all of this began, I stopped asking myself if I was wrong. I wasn't. I was just late. I didn't tell her what I saw. Not that day. Not the next. Not at all. There was a moment, maybe two, where the urge hit me sharp, immediate, like a match striking dry wood. I wanted to burst into the house and ask her straight to her face who he was, how long it had been going on, how she could sit in that cafe with her hand in his and speak about our marriage like it was some spreadsheet that no longer balanced. But then I realized something. She already had her answer. She'd made her choice. And whatever confrontation I thought I needed, it wouldn't change a thing. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't scared. She had simply moved on, with no plan to tell me, no desire to come clean. She just hoped I wouldn't notice, or maybe didn't care if I did. So I decided to stop reacting and start preparing. The first thing I did was separate my accounts. Quietly, I opened a new checking account under a different bank, moved my direct deposit there, and began phasing out the joint one. No sudden closures. No red flags. I let it trickle slowly, the way a glacier melts, inch by inch, irreversible. Next, I canceled the auto payments, our Spotify family plan, the shared meal kit subscription, her yoga studio membership, the one I'd been unknowingly covering for months. I created new passwords for everything that was mine: Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, Apple ID. I logged her out of all of them. Just a clean, quiet reset. She never mentioned it. Or maybe she noticed and chose not to say anything. That's how things had been between us. Unspoken contracts signed in silence. She pulled away emotionally. I retreated practically. She played her game and I began playing mine. At night, I stopped sleeping in our bed. Started with an excuse: back pain, I said. I told her the mattress wasn't doing me any favors and that the guest bed gave better support. She smiled, offered to switch sides, then dropped it when I insisted I was fine. That first night in the guest room was strangely peaceful. I closed the door, locked it, slept through the night without hearing the faint glow of her phone screen beside me, without wondering who she was texting when her fingers moved across the glass like a secret pianist, without pretending to be asleep while waiting for her to set the phone face down. Screen silenced, guilt absent. After that, I stayed there permanently. She never followed. I started packing her things slowly. Not everything. Not in boxes labeled "leave." I wasn't careless. I wasn't cruel. I started with the seasonal closet, the guest room where she kept coats and scarves and handbags she rarely used. I folded each item the way she liked, color-coded them, tucked cedar balls between folds to keep the scent she preferred. Then I placed them into 3 storage bins and slid them under the bed. She never noticed. Or if she did, she never asked. Maybe she thought I was being helpful. Maybe she thought I was cleaning. Or maybe she saw the pattern and, like me, decided to say nothing. That was our marriage now, a performance without a script. 2 people on the same stage reading from different plays. We still ate together. Still watched the shows we always watched. Still brushed past each other in the hallway with polite smiles and lukewarm conversation. But I stopped asking about her trips. She stopped offering explanations. There was no more mention of Houston. No more talk of clients. Just vague details, muttered half-truths. I nodded at all of it. I didn't care about the lies anymore. I cared about the exit. I started going on walks again. Long ones. Early in the morning before she woke up. Sometimes in the evenings after she left for yoga or wine nights with friends I'd never met. I told myself the walking helped me think. And it did. The neighborhood looked different now, not in a physical way but in how it echoed. I noticed things I hadn't in months. Cracks in sidewalks, the way porch lights flickered on automatic timers, the pattern of a dog's bark from the yard down the street. Ordinary things. Real things. Honest in their repetition. It was comforting. Because in those walks, I realized something important. Something I should have admitted months ago. I wasn't staying for love. I was staying because I thought I was supposed to. Because of time. History. Because of the photos in frames and the mailbox with both our names. Because of the way people said, "You guys are perfect together," without ever seeing what lived behind our front door. But inside me, I'd already left. The difference now was that I was finally building the runway to do it physically. One evening, I got home before her. It was just after 6. The house was quiet, golden with sunset. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and paused in the hallway. There was music playing in the kitchen, something instrumental, soft and electronic, the kind of playlist Lana used when she cooked or answered emails. She wasn't home, just the music looping. I walked in and noticed her laptop open on the counter. Her phone plugged in beside it. A water glass with lipstick on the rim. A canvas tote bag slouched on the floor. It looked like she had just stepped away, maybe to pick up takeout or grab something from the store. And in that moment, looking at her things scattered like breadcrumbs, I realized this wasn't my home anymore. Not really. It was hers. I had just been living in it. So I sat at the table, opened my laptop, and began the next phase. I found a new place. Not far. Just enough distance to breathe. A furnished rental, month to month, above a boutique near the square. 1 bedroom, soft lighting, exposed brick walls. Nothing special. But it was mine. I paid the deposit, arranged the keys, and didn't tell her. Instead, I went back home and continued the performance. We made dinner together that night, stir-fry. She asked if I liked the new sesame oil she bought. I said it was good. She poured wine. We watched an episode of something forgettable. Laughed once. She fell asleep on the couch, and I covered her with the throw blanket she kept folded in the basket. I stood there for a long time watching her sleep, trying to remember the last time I'd looked at her without suspicion. Trying to remember the last time I saw her and didn't feel like I was observing a stranger wearing my wife's face. Couldn't. On my final night in the house, I took one last walk. It was dark out, chilly, the kind of air that bites your fingertips and makes you remember you're alive. I walked past the houses we used to admire together, past the neighbor's tree that she once said looked like something from a Tim Burton movie, past the corner lot where she once told me she wanted to raise a dog and maybe a kid. None of that felt real anymore. Felt like someone else's memory. Like I'd read it in a book I liked once but never finished. When I got home, she was upstairs. I heard the shower running, music playing faintly from her Bluetooth speaker. I stood in the entryway and looked around at everything one last time. The framed photos, the books, the candle she never lit but always replaced. Her shoes near the door half kicked off. My jacket on the hook. The house we built. Then I turned and walked quietly to the guest room. I closed the door, locked it behind me, and slept better than I had in months. A week later, she told me she was pregnant. Just like that. No build-up. No soft lead-in. No warm smile or hopeful tone. Just a sentence she dropped into the middle of a Tuesday evening, like it was nothing more than a passing thought. "I'm pregnant," she said, standing in the kitchen, her back to the window, the fading daylight turning her hair into a silhouette of someone I didn't quite recognize anymore. The words didn't hit me like I thought they would. There was no immediate shock. No cinematic drop of the glass in my hand. No sudden twist of nausea or pounding in my ears. Instead, everything just slowed. The hum of the refrigerator. The tick of the wall clock. The quiet fizz of the soda in the can I had opened 5 minutes earlier. I stared at her, waiting for the rest. Waiting for her to explain. To cry. To smile nervously. To look at me and ask how I felt. To reach across the counter and say something human. Something that acknowledged the weight of what she just said. But she didn't. She looked calm. Not serene, just settled. Like she'd already had this conversation 100 times in her head. Like my reaction didn't matter. My mouth opened, but no words came. There were 100 questions colliding in my throat, but none of them made it out. I wasn't even sure which one I wanted answered first. When? How far along? Have you seen a doctor? Is it? I didn't ask. I didn't need to, because then she said the sentence that ended everything. "I figured you'd just adapt." She said it plainly. No edge. No cruelty. Just a flat, almost bureaucratic assumption. Like I was a variable she had already accounted for in the spreadsheet of her life. "I figured you'd just adapt. Not we'll figure this out together. Not I'm scared too. Not I need you. Just that." As if my consent, my choice, my emotions, the very foundation of what a marriage is supposed to be, were now footnotes in someone else's plan. It was in that moment that everything truly collapsed. Not with drama. Not with shouts or slamming doors or accusations. But with silence. A clean break disguised as a conversation. She leaned against the counter, eyes calm, hands resting on the ceramic edge of the sink. She wasn't watching me to gauge my reaction. She wasn't trying to soften the blow. She wasn't looking for forgiveness or support. She was watching herself. Or maybe she was just waiting to be done. I think that was the moment I stopped seeing her as Lana. Not the woman I married. Not the woman I used to write songs about in my head during road trips. Not the woman who once danced barefoot in the rain outside our first apartment because the weather felt cinematic. That Lana had died quietly somewhere between Houston and here. This was someone else. Someone who had made a decision about the future and assigned me a role in it without even asking if I wanted the part. "I figured you'd just adapt." Adapt to what exactly? To being lied to? To raising a child I didn't help create? To watching her carry a piece of a man whose name she never gave me? To being the safe option? The quiet fallback? The husband by name only? No, I couldn't. I stood there, still holding my soda can, realizing I hadn't taken a single sip. My hand felt numb from the cold. I set it down on the counter, the metallic click louder than it should have been, like the only punctuation in a room full of blank pages. She didn't flinch. She didn't move. I wanted to ask her why she was telling me now. Why tonight, of all nights? Was this part of the plan? Had she rehearsed this too? Did she think I'd be grateful? Angry? Silent? But I didn't ask. Because somewhere deep in my bones, I already knew. She wasn't telling me because she wanted to bring me closer. She was telling me because she had to. Because hiding it would have eventually become impossible. Because she'd need someone to play the part of husband when her stomach began to swell, when the neighbors started asking questions, when the baby shower invites went out. She didn't want a partner. She wanted an alibi. And maybe, just maybe, she thought I'd be too polite, too tired, or too broken to refuse. But she didn't know how much she'd already lost me. I didn't sleep that night. She went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. I stayed downstairs in the dark, sitting on the couch with the TV off, holding the remote like it could anchor me to something real. The air felt heavier than usual. Not just figuratively. Actually heavier, like the room itself was struggling to hold the weight of everything that had just been said, and everything that hadn't. I stared into the middle distance, mind racing through years we'd spent building this life. The routines, the inside jokes, the late-night road trips, the quiet holidays. I saw it all like it was playing on a projector screen somewhere just out of reach. And then I saw it burn. Not in anger, not in rage, just surrender, like realizing a building has already collapsed, and you're standing in the dust pretending you can still open the front door. By morning, she was in the kitchen again, acting like it hadn't happened. She made coffee. Not black, just the usual, oat milk, cinnamon, 2 drops of honey. She poured a second cup, placed it on the table in front of me, and sat across without saying a word. No mention of the night before. No question about what I thought. No conversation about where we'd go from here. She just looked at her phone, scrolled through something, and nodded when I said I'd be working late. Like we were already living in a parallel universe where this baby had always been part of the plan and I had always agreed to raise it. That was her assumption. That was the betrayal. Not the infidelity. Not even the pregnancy. It was the quiet expectation that I would simply fall in line. That I would adjust myself into the shape of her choices. That I would twist and bend and nod and smile and carry the weight of decisions she made without me. And that, more than the cheating, more than the lies, more than the silence, was what finally broke me. It didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like clarity. A sharp edge. A clean line. I had no more doubts. No more questions. No more need to make sense of it. It was over, not because she said it was, not because I said it was, but because the trust that connected us had been severed in full, without ceremony. No fight. No yelling. Just a sentence. I figured you'd just adapt. That was the end of everything. 2 days later, I filed for divorce. No arguments. No confrontation. I left the papers on the kitchen table and went to work like it was any other day. She didn't call. Didn't cry. Just sent a single text. It didn't have to end like this. But it did. 14 years. That was the window we had to get it right. And we didn't. She packed while I was gone. I never saw her leave. Just checked the door camera that night. A white van, 3 trips to the driveway, then silence. No goodbye. No last look back. Just gone. I moved to Idaho Falls. Rented a quiet apartment over an antique shop. Took a job at a small accounting firm. I bought my own cookware. Started drinking black coffee. No one knew me here. No one asked about her. Every morning, the same old man nodded at me by the riverwalk like we were friends. We weren't. But it was something. I stopped counting the days she might reach out. I stopped needing closure. There was no anger, only motion. Quiet, steady, forward. Like air clearing after the storm.